I want to welcome you to NBO Presents. I'm Pam Morton, the Executive Director of the National Basketry Organization. We're excited to have you join us today for our first NBO Presents of 2022, a conversation with Janine Wang, hosted by NBO board member Nick DeFord. Janine will be sharing her process with us and taking her around her studio today. She and Nick will have an ongoing discussion throughout the program. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions. We don't use the chat during this except for presenters putting things in that they might think is good for you to see. Nick and I will be monitoring your questions throughout the program. As you can imagine, these webinars have a financial impact on NBO. I will be putting a donation link in the Q&A section, or you can go to nationalbasketry.org to the donate tab. We appreciate your donation of any amount. And thank you very much. I will be hiding myself until towards the end of the program, and I'm turning it over to Nick now. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Pam. And just to introduce myself, as Pam mentioned, my name is Nick DeFord. I am a board member of the NBO and really pleased to be here, but also I am the Chief Programs Officer of Arrowmont School of Arts and Crafts, which is where I first met Janine several years ago, and look forward to working with her again there. So let me introduce a little bit more about Janine. Janine Wang is an artist and craftsperson based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She works professionally in the design and modern production of retail home goods and furniture, while keeping one foot firmly rooted in wood turning, weaving, and the handcrafted world, believing that we need all of these in good design. She has exhibited and done residencies widely at institutions such as the Center for Art in Wood, Arrowmont School of Arts and Crafts, the American Association of Woodturners. She holds a Bachelor of Architecture from Cooper Union and an MA in Furniture Design from the Rhode Island School of Design. She began teaching in 2021 as an associate professor in the Fine Woodworking Department of Bucks County Community College and as a workshop instructor at different American craft schools, which is a really good time for me to say that Janine's got a lot of upcoming workshops this summer. So I want to sort of highlight some of those. Of course, we'll start very pleased here at Arrowmont to have Janine teaching a workshop May 29th through June 3rd. Called Wood Turning for the Human Hand. But then she also teaches at Peters Valley School of Craft 2 different workshops in June and July, Introduction to Bowl Turning and Basketry into Wood Turning. And then finally in August, Janine will be teaching Weaving into Wood Turning at Snow Farm New England Craft. So you can tell lots of different processes and techniques, which I know we'll learn more about today. But if you want more information about some of these upcoming workshops on Janine's schedule, please be sure to visit her website at janinewang.com. And for those of you who don't know, Janine will also have a feature in the spring 2022 issue of Basketry Plus, so be sure to look for that as well. So without further ado, I'm happy to start the studio visit in conversation with Janine. So thank you so much, Janine, for being here today and welcoming us to your studio. So show us around a little bit and let us know more about your process.
Sure. Thanks for that intro, Nick. I don't have any written plan or speech ready out. I'm hoping to keep it pretty light today. I do have a presentation with some work just so I can fill you in and show you maybe process photos of how I build some of this stuff. Like Nick mentioned, I got more of my craft footing in woodworking and wood turning, and then added basketry on later. So I'm a relatively new basket weaver or basket maker, which I don't really mind. I've been enjoying, I think I've gotten over that hump of the first year where you just learn the material and how things start, how the materials work and what structures are familiar in basketry language. And then after that first year, I started incorporating a lot of weaving into my woodworking and wood turning work, which has been really fun. And it's a little bit lonely. I haven't really found a buddy to do it with. other than pulling in my woodworker friends for help and collaboration a lot of the time. So I'm hoping that this talk and this tour might inspire some of you guys to like try woodworking, or maybe if you're a woodworker, vice versa, try incorporating basketry and join me. It's really fun and there's so many possibilities. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to mention my studio is in the middle of like the Kensington neighborhood in Philadelphia, where it's spring in Philly now. So everybody's on the roads and they're like quads and ATVs and bikes and like those three-wheeled motorized things. It can be really loud outside. So if you hear any like booming or squealing, no one's hurt. They're just having fun. Okay, there we go. Let me get this full screen. Can you guys all see my screen? Okay. This is my presentation on the combination between woodworking and basketry. I mostly started out combining basketry into wood turning, and wood turning is the art and craft of mounting a piece of wood on a machine. And the purpose of that machine is to spin your wood really fast so that you can come in with a tool and cut it, and you can create like really beautiful things. Think like bowls, candlesticks, stair spindles. That's what the lathe has traditionally been used for. And I couldn't help once I started weaving baskets to try to combine some of that together. And I have had some pretty good fortune with convincing woodturners to try basketry. So this was the piece that I made for a article in the American Woodturner Journal, showing how to start getting those two things incorporated. I really like as a maker that I have full control over both the basketry and the wood turning and woodworking aspects, because as you can see in this picture, you can really get your two forms to work together if you are like the bridge between those two visions, and it's you in the driver's seat. So these are just a couple of the first early experiments. There are probably a lot more out there. It's hard to gather all these photos together sometimes, but on the left area is a charger plate that I gifted to a couple friends, with weaving incorporated into the rim of the platter. The one to the right next to it was the first version of that previous image. And then there are a couple of other experiments trying to see how I could combine reed in like dynamic ways, in every way I could think of. On the bottom right is more of like a figurative thing, which I really enjoyed. I liked using the reed to kind of like bridge the gap between objects, because the two, wood and basketry, have like two completely different material like strengths, qualities, and cons, and they can kind of work together to make up for what the other lacks. And finally, that center bottom photo is, if you look really carefully, I don't know if you guys can see or if I can zoom in. Oh, there it is. I turned so many of these little Christmas trees for one holiday season. Each one of those little circles is a piece of dyed reed. That's I drilled a hole through the Christmas tree, inserted the tiny piece of reed, and then turned it flush with the rest of the wood. And as many of you guys will know, the center of the reed kind of stays the same color while the outside takes in the dye, and it doesn't always go all the way through. And that I thought was really cool. So there's like a green circle around that white reed in the middle and a red circle around it. And that was very good. Okay, I can't zoom back out. There we go. Let's see, so this was that piece for the article. And in the article, I talked about what kinds of design decisions you want to make in your wood turning part to then like look ahead and know that like, oh, I have to drill holes into the rim of this bowl. So let's say in this, I'm using number 5 round reed. I kept the thickness of the bowl just thick enough so that number 5 would go in, and I think it's number 3 for my weavers. When I did a 3-rod whale for this, and when the weaving part piled up, I'd done some tests already and realized that I needed to leave like just the right amount of gap between the edge of the bowl and the actual stake to get it to like the lines on the outside of your form to line up flush. There are other little design things like the inside of the rim is rounded while the outside is sharp, and that's all kind of in the service of creating that one holistic form. This was a lighting piece that I made for the American Woodturners, again, for their professional outreach program, which required you make a very small thing. I started dabbling with the idea of combining light with wood with baskets. I think since making this, I've like now seen basket lights everywhere, but I really liked that I was able to use the wood, which is that inside turned vase-ish shape, to control what direction and like what kind of structure the basket part was going to take. So what's nice about this is, let's say if you look at like the foot of that vase, do that zoom trick again. I left a little foot right there so that I could drill my stakes into this. I had a base to drill them into. And then at the top, you can't see it here, but there were stakes going straight down into the top of that rim. And this has been really fun because you have a lot of control over where your light goes. The thing that I noticed when I was first starting weaving was that you could kind of let your stakes and weavers go all over the place, but since I'm a woodworker, I'm a little bit more, the word I want to use starts with an A, but I'm going to say meticulous. And I like things to go the way I want them to. And so I was able to use the wood and basketry in tandem so that I could get the effect I wanted. I also really liked that even though you can see it through the reed, depending on how you direct your gaps, you can direct where the light goes. So in this case, it kind of spotlights itself. Flicker was, sorry guys, this presentation got all discombobulated last night. My computer froze. Funny seeing this guy here. Flicker is another light where my partner, Brian Sklasky, who's a really great steam bender, and I made a frame like this that we could weave around. I'll talk more about that later. And this was at Arrowmont, actually, when Nick and I met. This was very early on when I started thinking about like different ways to combine the pieces into ways that weren't like formally basket types. So I'd learned how to do an egg basket like maybe a year before this. And it's like, what if I try to do 2 put together? And I created a sphere while at Arrowmont, which was so nice. I like just weaved out on the terrace and hung this guy up so that I'd have access. And then to hang the sphere with, actually, so that length of cord is actually electrical cord, and there's a light bulb in the middle. To hang the light up, I needed to create a arm. So I used a process I mentioned, steam bending, where there's a wallpaper steamer like down on the floor over there that they had at Arrowmont, and you basically steam this piece of a piece of wood, that curved guy right up there. So, and kind of like basketry, honestly, like to soften the fibers and their relationship to each other. So you can get it really hot. You basically like loosen the glue between the fibers. And then while it's still hot and malleable, you can bend it across the form and clamp it down and let it dry like that. And I mean, this is the same process that basket makers use to create like the hoops, the structure of, say, like the ribbed basket or like handles and things like that. So I made that guy. And when I brought it home to my partner, the steam bender, he said, "Are those hoops just all steam bent? Like, does that mean that you can make your own hoops, can't you?" And that's how we created that earlier light flicker, because he was like, let's just make some crazy wild shape. Screw hoops. Hoops are too simple for us. But he also helped me make a more complicated stem for that light. Oh darn, I don't have a photo of it during the day. But so the stem that it ended up getting was steam bent and also hollow on the inside. So you could slip the cord through the stem and you could adjust like how high the light hung down. This is another one where, I mean, we never went anywhere with this project, but it was really cool. A lighting prototype that combined the steam bending in the rim with a little bit of wood turning at the top right here to keep all of my pieces together. And we were playing with different ways to like connect from point A to point B using the basketry. I really liked the way that we were able to control like the light that the piece throws against the wall. So kind of like if you imagine these 3 shots on the bottom, if you turn the light, you cast like a wave all across the room. It was really nice. It ended up being too small, so I'm hoping someday we make a bigger one. I don't know if this will work. It's a video, but my internet connection's pretty bad, so it might not play so well. It's a video of me drilling the holes into the rims of the bowl that I send to wood turning chapters before I do a virtual demo so that people can see how the process works and weave, like they can prepare their own blanks and then weave along with me during the demo. I'm assuming that this video is also not going to work. It's disabled for this document. Dang it. This is a video that I did to pair with that article that I wrote for the AW. I actually have the link. If you guys give me 1 sec, I can drop it into the chat. And if anyone wants to see that, it literally walks you through the entire process of turning and then weaving. This is the piece that was made in that video. I made it during the pandemic, so I actually named it Landlocked. And then later on, as I got a little more experience with basketry and started meeting a lot of other basket makers, some cool like thought crossovers happened. This was, wait for that guy to pass. This was like a piece of serendipity. I was teaching at Peters Valley and I think it was, I just taught like the basketry into wood turning class. So I had all the basketry supplies in the fiber studio. And then the week after, I taught a intro to bowl turning class in which a willow weaver and farmer named Sandra Kehoe was taking the course. And she gave me some willow bark and I made this while I was there. And this is the last slide. It's just it's not perfect, but I wanted to bring it up as kind of to make a case for why you should do everything yourself. This was like kind of the first steps of a experiment I did with my close friend, a silversmith named Carson Sayo. So he is like a hand hammering like silversmith. He hammered out these copper bowls that he gave to me to weave with and bridge between the two pieces. But like, I mean, it was like the first experiment, so I'm sure we'll do better next time. But as you can see, if you don't have the like full control over both of your mediums, it is really kind of, it's its own kind of work to like work with other people and make sure that everyone has enough details about like how the like both mediums work in order to move forward, which is why I work so well with my partner because we're just constantly talking. Okay, I think that's it. Let me see. Yep. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I just wanted to put out there also, if anybody has any questions, I'm super happy to take them. I'm sure we'll have time at the end to address any kind of questions you have, anything about woodworking or anything like that at all. The nice thing about, I mean, so what I found in working in both mediums is that the nice thing about basketry is that you don't need like any overhead. You can do it anywhere. Every culture has some kind of weaving and you can like weave outside. I have a friend who like weaves on her morning commute on the train in New York. And there's kind of not the bar to entry that woodworking tends to have. So if I can answer anybody's questions about woodworking, and like it's really very doable, you don't have to like start out full on with all your machines. You can like talk to people and get a good sense of what might work, what might not work, where the shops are, things like that. I'm like happy to answer all of your questions. So keep that in mind. We'll come back for questions, and I'm actually gonna switch out from my computer to my phone so I can show you guys some stuff. 1 second. Such an unflattering angle. Okay, let me see if I can flip this around. Great. Okay, I will move very slowly. This is kind of where I started weaving some things. I built an armature so that I could have all my materials hanging down over my workspace. That eventually, I'm gonna go so slow. It morphed into the reed holder that you see behind me. So one of the most annoying things that I found about weaving was like having your materials everywhere. Used woodworking to make myself a jig so that I could have my materials in easy reach. I love this thing. Just clamp down your 2 clamps and it holds on to all of your stuff. This is the studio. We are located in what used to be a carpet mill in the 1880s that got broken down into artist studios. On that side is my partner's stuff or his area, and this side of the room is kind of more mine. Before this, I was in a windowless basement, so I was so happy to find sunlight and windows. This is where I do most of my work on the lathe. And I actually have a tripod set up here so I can sit you guys down for a second. Flip over, sorry. Okay. Nick, can you give me a shout if you end up not being able to hear me? I'm gonna walk over and talk.
Absolutely. I'll let you know.
So this is a lathe. You mount a piece of wood on and it spins. And normally you turn the lathe on and take a tool, lay it on this tool rest, and I'm just gonna take a tiny cut. I'm not wearing safety gear, but then you can start to cut and shape things out. This is just a bowl. A mistake I made during commissions, so it's just a waste wood essentially, but I thought I could show you guys the drilling and reed process. So, I have a piece of number 4 in my reed gauge. All that I've done is, this is number 4 right here, it's in that hole. If you pair it with a drill bit that's just slightly smaller than the number 4 reed itself, this is squishy enough that you can kind of smush it into the hole. And this is a piece of used reed, so it's already been wet and it's a little bloated, but I found that if you drill your hole slightly small and you put the piece of reed in, the water from the reed actually bloats the wood, and the reed is also bigger, and so it ends up like plugging in, and it's actually really hard to get out. So people ask me oftentimes if I use glue or anything like that, but I know that glue is like a blasphemous word in basketry. So I've tried I almost never use it either, and just find some sort of like mechanical way to attach most of my things. So the simplest way is, like I said, just drilling the right size hole. This is like a 7/64 drill bit. And then sticking the reed in, the water bloats, it just locks together. And then once you weave the rest of your basket, it's not coming out. I used to just take this drill bit and either lock my lathe so that this doesn't move and try to drill in, or I would have like a piece of foam and like hold it down on the table and try to drill in. This is a straight wall bowl, but if you can imagine, like with a slanted sides of a bowl, it's really pretty difficult and nerve-wracking to drill the hole like directly through a fairly thin bowl thickness wall. So I was doing a demo with the Seattle Woodturners, and they were watching me freak out about drilling these holes. And one of the guys was like, "Why don't you use a drill wizard?" And that dude changed my life. I now have a drill wizard, which is a jig for mounting a drill onto your where you normally put your tool rest for your tools. And I have it in, so let me just show you guys real quick. Get you a good angle.
Hey, Janine. Oh, okay.
Oh no.
Your video cut out just a
Sorry,
second, but it's back.
okay, we're good. Yeah, that was my TA calling me, sorry. Let's see. I'm trying to get you guys a good angle over here. There it is. Okay, I don't know how much got lost, but I was saying that this is a drill wizard, which saves me from the difficulty of freehand drilling into holes. Now, if I line everything up and have the right angle, I can just turn on my drill. And it makes the most perfect, beautiful hole. The nice thing is if you combine this with the indexing capabilities of my lathe spindle, so I can have it turn. I think there's a notch essentially in here in my spindle that lets me turn and lock it in 24 increments all around the whole thing. I can just turn, find the next notch, turn, find the next notch, and the drill always goes in the same angle every single time. It's wonderful. So that's been a huge help. It's allowed me to make, sorry, he keeps calling. Let me see. Okay. It's allowed me to make pieces like this, where I needed to drill hundreds of holes in order to get the effect that I wanted. Okay. The last big thing I want to show you guys was I have one of the flickers at home and I brought it to the wood shop today where everything gets dirty and ruined. So it's only going to be here for a second. But that guy was spent on these jigs. So the first part of the frame, the part that's up against the wall right now, was bent in here, and it's one continuous piece that gets joined right here at the tail. And after that's made, there's a second jig for the quote unquote rib on top. We bend the piece of wood over this guy and then let it dry on the jig. Once all of that is dry, then we can take that piece off and then scarf the two pieces together at the front and do a lap joint at the head of it. But yeah, steam bending is pretty amazing. Oh, he has a frame on the wall actually there. That's perfect. Okay, so this is Brian's area, and this piece corresponds with this jig. Kind of. I think that might be an old jig. But since we made so many of these, yeah, I do think he has a better jig somewhere. We invested some time into creating reusable, like sturdy steam bending jigs. But yeah, I don't know if it's meaningful for me to go around and point out all of our machines, but we've been accumulating pretty hard throughout this pandemic. The latest acquisition of which is this Bridgeport total overkill, but yeah.
Hey, Janine.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions that I think would like really be topical right now, if you don't mind me jumping in here and asking some from the Q&A.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, somebody brought, well, two people, both Cheryl and Nancy, were kind of asking a little bit more about the materials that you use, especially combining both woodworking and basketry. You talked about that woodworking might be a little bit more a little bit more of an investment for the studio and getting into it. But Cheryl asked, how steep do you think is the basketry learning curve, and also the cost and easy availability of materials? And I was thinking specifically for someone in Philadelphia, what that's like. And related to that, Nancy was also interested in wood bending. So what kind of, how do you access materials, and what's the best type of materials to access when you're working with wood bending too? So maybe talk a little bit about how you get the materials, what your learning curve is through that. And yeah.
That's a really good question. I think kind of similarly to how you can forage your own basketry materials, specifically steam bending and wood turning, it behooves you to find just what's laying on the side of the road. I know in a lot of flat working, you want to get like the kiln dried stuff from the lumber yard, which we have a lot around Philly at least. But you do have to buy it. It gets a little bit pricey, but you want your wood. Here, I can show you guys my wood pile. You want your wood to be like dried in a kiln so that it's stabilized and it stays flat and doesn't move when you're doing most woodworking. But when it comes to steam bending, I'm going to cover my camera a bit so I can walk without sickening anyone. Here. So we actually keep a ton of like logs in the studio. That's because with steam bending, it's better to work with fresh wood. So the wood is not totally dry and it's like still a little bit malleable. It's still kind of alive. And you don't have to like work as hard to make it not crack when you force the wood to basically like reanimate itself like a zombie. And because of that, I'll often find Brian like splitting a tree by hand with a wedge so that he can get like that nice straight grain out of it. There's different types of woods that are different, good and different for everything. All of this wood in this pile here, I got for free, just off the side of the road with my chainsaw. Or people will like give it to you. If you ever cut down a tree in your neighborhood, for example, find a local wood turning club because they'll take it away for you for free. In wood turning, it's really helpful to have logs because, like you can see with the flat kiln dried wood, it's all in boards, so it's kind of thinner. And if you're going to turn bowls and things like that, the log actually works better because you have that whole thick chunk of meat that you can then shape some larger volume object out of, and you don't have to like glue all of your wood together. It is a matter exactly the same as basketry of learning your materials though. The wood, as it dries, say I turn like a fresh log, it like moves and warps. And so you can see in this bowl right here, even though it's covered in yuck, this was turned wet. And when I turned it, it was round. But as it dried, it lost the roundness completely and warped and moved, which I think is really beautiful. But there are ways around it too. You can turn something once and leave the walls kind of thick, force it to dry. You can like microwave it or like put it in a dry box or just let it sit for a few weeks, months, up to years, and then turn it again after it's dry so that you can get that perfect circle. I hope that answers your question.
I think that was great. There's another very pragmatic, practical studio question. Helen's asking what you and Brian do about dust and dust extraction in your studio, or maybe you can even talk about at this juncture any other kind of safety, protocols and things like that you all have working in your studio to work safely with the different processes that you do.
I wear personally, I know it's like just a bit of like a sliding scale with woodworkers. Personally, I wear glasses whenever anything is on. like any machinery, you just never know if something will hit you in the eye. And then, I mean, the danger is you get distracted for a second and then something goes wrong. So in wood turning, we always wear a full face shield because the wood is flying pretty fast. I mean, nothing bad ever actually happens. It's like wearing a seatbelt. You just do it just for that one time that it really does blow up in your face. As to the dust, I really hate it. Like, and especially I think like ever since the pandemic set in as well, I've just like felt so much more health conscious, and then I wasn't able to get N95s. We have a good bit of dust collection in our studio, at least, where we can like move. We have a portable dust collector that we can move around and plug into the different machines to try to mitigate the dust. But the like I've noticed from seeing images of other basket weaver studios that like they're just so beautiful and clean. And I can't leave anything in here because like no matter what you do, everything gets covered in just a thin film of dust. And that's why I'm going to I bring all my finished objects home or like to wherever they're supposed to go as soon as I can. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's definitely a concern.
We had one question early on, somebody was asking a little bit more about, as we mentioned at the very beginning during your bio, with your degree from Cooper, how do you feel like that architecture school helped you with what you do today, especially when you're designing objects like furniture and things for the home? Are you still thinking and working in architectural aspects these days? Touch a little bit about that, how you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I actually consider furniture to be like a smaller scale version of architecture. It's like architecture for the single human body, or maybe like the family who lives with the piece at home. And so most of my pieces in furniture, I mean, I didn't include them so much in today's presentation, but most of my work is concerned with like how our physical bodies fit into furniture, and how like the stereotypical, say, like chair or table archetypes don't really fit us so well a lot of the time. Like you always think of like a chair as like a straight back thing with like the 4 straight legs, and like you get told as a kid that you have to learn how to sit in that and sit still at school, but like frankly that's not very good it's not comfortable. Like you don't have to put up with the world the way that it's built. And I mean that's something that I like really appreciate about learning woodworking. It's just made me feel less of like a victim of my environment and something as like something that I can change. So how that ties back to like basketry for me is a little bit hard. I see so many similar concepts of like you can problem solve your way out of a basketry conundrum, and you can like change the way that baskets are built. But personally, I'm still looking for like how I can get the baskets to be more engaged like at the furniture and like human scale. So far I like the lights, but I think that's not quite it. Not yet, at least.
No, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. We have 2 more like kind of very practical questions I think I'll ask. One is a follow-up from Cheryl, who asked earlier about sourcing basketry materials. I think Cheryl, and I think there's a lot of people in the audience you could probably provide, but wants to know specifically, where do you get your reeds at? And and how did you learn basketry? Like where's a good supplier for basketry supplies?
Yeah.
And
okay,
well, go ahead and answer that one. And I've got one more, and then I think Pam's going to jump on after that. So,
okay. Oh my God, I didn't realize when I started getting more into weaving that this was such a thing of contention between basket weavers, like where your sources are. I only have East Coast info. I get my reed mostly from the country seat, which is like in Kempton, PA, which is not too far away from me. And there's a weaver named Mary Cardy who also lives like in the Pine Barrens, not too far from me, who used to have a storefront, but now she like just like sells one-to-one. Her prices can't be beat. And she gets her reed directly from the PL Butte guy, the distributor in New York City. I think his name is Paul. I don't remember, but she, and that's hands down, like, that's the best read, the blue ribbon stuff. But yeah, those are my two main sources. I've dabbled in like ordering stuff from elsewhere, and it, like, you're right, it doesn't go quite that well most of the time.
And this might be our last question of the day before Pam jumps on, but this is from BA in the audience, and BA is asking, when you bring in wood from the side of the road, do you ever have any issues with, in this case, asking specifically about insects that hitchhike in, or maybe anything else that just come into your studio that you don't want in the studio?
Yes, Pennsylvania has Pennsylvania wood roaches, which are just so disgusting. They if you leave your wood alone, like I like to mellow mine out in garbage bags. That wet, moist environment just breeds them. I do want to also make a PSA though. If you're using wood that you find on the side of the road, do not travel far with it. I would only get wood that's like really like within, for me, like the city or county limits. When there's so much living inside every one of those felled trees. And so when you like bring something, say, over state lines, you may inadvertently be bringing like pests and invasive species and helping them spread. For us, the emerald ash borer and the spotted lanternfly are a huge problem. And that's a problem that's like widely spread by bringing firewood and that kind of thing across state lines.
That's thank you so much for answering that. I mean, that was incredibly informative, and I think people sometimes don't think about that. So I just want to say personally, thank you so much, Janine. That was incredibly interesting, just going through your studio, and love the demo and everything else. So I just want to personally thank you. This has been great. Looking forward to seeing you again at Arrowmont this summer and all the stuff that you're doing. And so thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you, Pam, for having me. I think you might be muted, Pam.
I think we double tap the mute button.
How about now?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to piggyback on what you said about how important it is for all of us to think about the hitchhiking insects and not traveling them. It's really critical in Northern California and other places around where I live. We worry about things on water products like boats and stand-up paddle boards and stuff like that people move from area to area. So always being aware of what we do with the things we use is critical. So thank you both so much for doing this. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. I love watching you talk about your work, Janine, and Nick's questions are so right on. So it's great, along with everybody else who put questions in the Q&A. Is there one? And then just a comment from Cheryl, a thank you. So it's been great to have you both join us today. We are recording this program and it will be available sometime next week on our website, nationalbasketry.org. In case you want to donate to help us continue with the NBO Presents, you can always find the donate tab on our homepage. And we will have another NBO Presents in May, and hopefully you'll all join us then. And I'm looking to see, yep, we're just getting thanks in the Q&A now. So thanks everyone. Janine and Nick, do you want to stay on for a minute as people leave? Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm gonna switch over to my computer. My hand's getting tired.
I bet.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording. Now, Pam.
I see Carol's still there. I'm gonna,
Yeah, it's just Carol now. And
I
us.
know, I'm actually trying to, maybe I was gonna allow Carol to talk in case she wants to say something to us.
I'm
Are
gonna
you-
promote. I can promote her to panelist.
Oh, yeah.
You're a panelist now, Carol.
Hey, Carol, are you still there?
If she is, she's muted.
She's muted. Okay, we're asking her
She
to
just left. She
unmute.
just put it on in the background. She's off doing something else.
Well, thanks. I think it went really well.
That was
You're
great.
walking around
That was like
demonstrating, that I loved. Okay, so the question I didn't ask was, so that piece of wood that had all those holes in it, what did you do with that?
Oh my God. Do you know the feminist artist Ava Hesse? Ava Hesse? She has these pieces called Accession, which are just like they're like these crazy pieces. I was so blown away the first time someone showed them to me. They're like these steel boxes made out of like steel mesh, and she meticulously, laboriously ties these like individual